At the University of Lincoln, the place you are most likely to co-chair a meeting is a subject committee meeting, but each school or programme does this differently. This training will give you a few chairing tips to get you started.
As the chair, your role is to guide and facilitate the meeting, ensuring that everyone has equal opportunity to speak, whilst at the same time making sure you get through the whole agenda. You also need to make sure the meeting is useful, so your role is to provide clarity around the outcomes and actions of each agenda item for the members of the meeting.
Firstly, you will need to plan the agenda. If you are co-chairing, this needs to be done in partnership with the staff co-chair. They should arrange a meeting with you to plan the agenda in advance. When doing this, think which of the points you want to raise have the highest priority and ensure they get a good place on the agenda. Make sure you know what you want to happen with the points on the agenda as well. Are they for information, discussion, or do you want a decision to be made on them? If you have lots of items for information, group them together, probably at the end of the agenda.
For subject committee meetings, make sure you have done your research. Talk to the course reps before the meeting and know what they have to raise, as well as the background to the issues and if there is any data that backs up the issue. This will help you facilitate the meeting. Arrive in good time. The most helpful times of the meeting tend to be the last 5 minutes and the first 5 minutes. This is because it will give you a chance to build a rapport with the people in the meeting and help you facilitate discussions more easily. It also gives you the chance to set up the room how you want it. For example, tables if you want a small group discussion or a circle for a whole group discussion.
The officer of the meeting will circulate the details and agenda. If you are a school rep and it is a subject committee meeting, make sure your course reps know when it is. At the start, if it is the first meeting of the year or if there are any new attendees, make sure you get people to introduce themselves by saying their name and their role. There may be people missing, so check for apologies and ensure these are noted by the officer who will be taking minutes.
At the start, it is worthwhile highlighting the purpose and importance of the meeting and also some of the key discussion points. At the start of each point, it is good to give an overview of why the point is being discussed. Make sure you are clear and concise throughout the meeting. Don't waffle and provide concise overviews of people's points. If you are chairing a subject committee meeting, make sure the reps understand and have a good idea of how to feedback what has happened back to the students on their course.
Your role as the chair is to keep control, making sure that it doesn't go off on a tangent and that everyone has the chance to speak. A good way to do this is to set time limits for each point, making sure you don't go over this. Let the attendees know what the time limits are before each point so that they aren't surprised when you need to move on. Sometimes it is not possible to do this, as some discussions will take longer than planned, so allow for some flexibility in the agenda. Know what things can be taken elsewhere if you run out of time. You need to have clear discussions made at the end of the meeting. Gain a consensus from people's conversations about what the decision should be. Clarify this through phrases like, "Do we all agree that an amicable decision is?"
Your role as the chair is to provide clarification over what is being discussed throughout the meeting, both around the initial point but also paraphrasing what people have said and discussions that have occurred. Make sure jargon and abbreviations don't happen. If people use acronyms, please make sure that they explain them. Summarise what has been decided at the end of each point and make sure that this is noted in the minutes, as well as who is going to take responsibility for that point. Throughout discussions, it may become apparent that some issues are controversial as people have different views on them. Be prepared to highlight that the issue is controversial and people have different viewpoints. If in these discussions no consensus has been reached, think about how else you could gather opinions on the issue.
Your role as the chair is to remain neutral. It is important to do this so that during controversial discussions, people do not think you are siding with a particular viewpoint. If you have a really strong viewpoint on something, it is a good idea to step down from the role for that particular point. Make sure someone is given the chance to make a contribution. If someone is not contributing, you can ask them specifically if they have an opinion on this issue. No names should be stated throughout the meeting. If someone does this, you need to intervene and remind them not to. It is also a good idea to remind people at the start of the meeting as well.
A good chair will have the following traits: clarity of speech. They are able to provide concise overviews of what members of the meeting have said. Open body language. When you want discussion to occur, make sure your palms are facing upwards. When you are directing a point, you want your palms facing down. Make sure your arms are not crossed at any time. Be impartial. Make sure you are always neutral in your opinions. Timekeeping. Set out how long you are going to spend on each point. Approachability. Make sure you smile. Don't be overbearing, and make sure you thank people for each point they make. Tact. The guidance in the following slides will help you to provide tactful responses in different situations. Understanding of the context and agenda items. This will help you to explain each agenda point, which will make the discussions of the meeting more useful.
If you have a really strong viewpoint on something, it is a good idea to step down from the chair role for that particular point. Make sure everyone is given the chance to make a contribution. If someone is not contributing, you can ask them specifically if they have an opinion on the issue. No name should be stated throughout the meeting. If someone does this, you need to intervene and remind them not to. It is also a good idea to remind people at the start of the meeting as well.
People in meetings can also be difficult. Some ways to deal with this are: remind people of the meeting rules. You can use the phrase "just to remind everyone," so as to not single anyone out. Be firm and consistent. Remember, you are the chair, so in the setting of the meeting, you are in charge, and you have one role, which is to get through the meeting, ensuring everyone has the chance to speak. You can remind people that this is your role. They should respect this. Widen discussion if two people get into an argument. You can use the phrase, "Thank you for both of your points. I can see that this is a controversial subject, so I'd like to open this up to the rest of the room." Ask for suggestions for improvement. If someone is constantly criticising, again, you can open this up to the rest of the meeting. If you are stuck on one point and no outcomes are presenting themselves, you can ask the group for support by asking, for example, do people want to move on to the next topic?
Thank you for taking part in the chair training. If you have any further questions, just get in touch with the Students' Union.